Pastor Russ here with a spiritual thought for the day. I don't know if you're like me, but often when I read stories of people in the Old and New Testament, I'm amazed at what God is able to do through them. I read stories in the Old Testament about Moses, about Joseph, in the New Testament about the great missionary Paul, Mary, some of the disciples like Peter, like John, followers like Lydia. And as I read their stories, I think, man, I could never do that. That could never be me. But when you look at the background of these men and women, we find that they were common, ordinary people, just like you and just like me. But what made them uncommon was their obedience to Jesus Christ. Common people with unordinary or uncommon obedience to Christ. Because of that faith, God was able to do extraordinary things in their lives and through their lives. I'm reminded of a story in the New Testament where Peter and John were called before the Sanhedrin court. The Sanhedrin court was the highest court in Jewish law. It was like the Supreme Court of our day. They were brought before them to testify, if you would, about their relationship with Jesus and why they are going around telling about Jesus had been resurrected from the dead. After they had given their story, we find these words recorded in Acts 4:13. It says, when they, referring to the members of the Sanhedrin, these highly educated people, when they saw the courage of Peter and John and realized that they were unschooled, ordinary men, they were astonished and took note that these men had been with Jesus. Again, these were common, ordinary men, but who had an uncommon obedience to Jesus Christ. God was able to do great things in and through their lives. John 15:5, Jesus said, I'm the vine, you're the branches. He who abides in me and I in him, you'll bear much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. If we took that analogy that Jesus gave with an apple tree, and we know that if you said that's the trunk of the tree and here's a branch, as long as that branch stays vitally connected to the trunk, the life source, it's going to produce apples. But the moment that branch is snapped off, it will no longer produce any fruit. Jesus is saying to you and to me, as long as we stay in that vital relationship with Christ, it's going to be amazing what He will and can do in and through our lives. So I want to encourage you today to take some time to reevaluate your commitment, your obedience to Jesus. Could it possibly be that you and I are failing to make ourselves available to Christ because of doubt or the fact that we may simply be afraid? We need to remember that our part is to follow after Christ. It is His part to do that work in and through our lives. Who knows? Maybe one day the next generation will read a story about you and your life and how God did amazing things through you. And they'll sit there and think, I could never do that. Oh, if they only knew.